How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, a very swift interview just before you go on stage, and let's start with your visit to Nanterre. How did this thing take place? I mean, how did you get to Nanterre?
Well, I mean, it's we tour a lot and we play in France a lot, and this is just one of the stops for us. This is the through the booking agents. I don't know how the booking agents got the gig. I mean, we got a gig.
Because Nanterre مدينة ضاحية العاصمة الباريزية وفيها وجه الضاحية عامة وهناك نوع من العلاقة الخاصة ما بين المدينة والضاحية. هل هذا الشيء يعني لك كثير أم لا? It's just the fact that being in Nanterre is the suburbs of Paris and stuff about suburbs in Paris, and you could have been in the New Morning or somewhere like the whole idea of a city and the suburb. Does it mean anything to you playing out of the big city?
Well, we've been playing Paris for a number of years, and we have played New Morning. We played quite a few venues in Paris, in sort of central Paris. So it's good to sort of come out of there and play somewhere that is, a little bit outside on the outskirts of the city. It's good. So I'm looking forward to it.
كلمة عن الكلمة، لأنك أنت بدأت بالكتابة قبل أن تنتقل إلى عالم الموسيقى عام 2007 مع فريقك The Space Band، ولكن في البداية أنت كاتب، وهناك كثير من الألبومات التي صدرت لك تحمل اسم الألبوم يحمل اسم الكتاب، مثل بيرت هيدسون ولكن أيضا روبر أوركسترا. كيف أنت تصف علاقتك بين الموسيقى والكلمة؟ Before being here on stage and before being into music, you have been, we don't have the time to know about the whole story, but basically you've been first with the word, the writing, with the poetry. So, and some of the albums carry the name of your books, and Bert Hudson, Robert Kista. How would you describe swiftly, I know we don't have much time, but the interaction that you have between music and between words? I mean, between writing and between on the stage and on fire, and which is an internal stuff and out stuff.
Well, I mean, I came to poetry or writing through music. I was inspired not by Shakespeare or Keats or whatever to write. I was inspired by people from Trinidad, like the Mighty Sparrow, all these Lord Kitchener, all these great calypsonians from Trinidad. They inspired me by the way they used words to start writing songs and writing words. And for me, poetry is always about music. Poetry is music. Poetry is a form of it's like spoken music. So for me, the connection between poetry and music is always there. If you have a poem, if you're writing a poem, it has to have a melody, it has to have a swing, it has to have a rhythm to it. Poets use the same language as musicians. We speak about meter, we speak about verses, we speak about rhythm, we speak about the line, we speak in the same lyric, the same language. So for me, there always has been this great connection and tie between music and poetry. I don't separate them.
When you're عندما تكون في ترينيداد وتكون في هذه الأرض التي أنت ولدت عليها، ما هي العلاقة السوداء، موسيقى السوداء والهوية السوداء بعطائك كفنان بريطاني اليوم؟ كيف تنظر أنت إلى هذا الواقع الأسود اليوم موسيقيا أيضا؟ I mean, when you have the being in Trinidad and then living in London, and the whole black heritage, let's say, of otherwise in poetry or in music and in your daily life. I mean, the black identity side of the stories. Musically speaking, we can hear it, we can feel it. We're often flying in different places when we listen to your music. But I mean, do you declare it as a way of being? I mean, this is it a fight for you?
Not at all. I mean, growing up in Trinidad, being a Caribbean person, my sort of identity is what you call a hybrid identity. So it's not just Africa. Africa is a huge part of who I am, of course, and a huge part of who we all are, But in my blood, or if you want to look at it like that, in my genealogy, there's also Latin America, there's also Chinese, there's Portuguese, there's European, there's African, there's we are a very mixed family. My family's got people from all over the world. So I think it's kind of self-defeating to say, just Africa. I think there's more than that. And I'm not an essentialist. I don't believe in blackness for the sake of being black. I believe it's one thing in a pot of many things. So while I have a lot of respect for it, I don't find any struggle within myself. I'm a Trinidadian, and that for me means that I occupy all these different identities at the same time. You know, a little bit of Europe, a little bit of Africa, a little bit of America, you know, and I move between these places geographically and mentally.
Last question, I promise, and then I'll leave you. Okay. سؤال أخير. ربما أنت تعرف أو لا تعرف العالم العربي قليلا، ربما استمعت بالطبع للأخبار. كيف تنظر إلى هذه التحركات في المنطقة التي تشهدها من بعيد؟ كيف تنظر إلى تحركات هذه الشعوب وأنت كشخص من ترينيداد ومن أوروبا في نفس الوقت؟ I don't know if you know I mean, you've probably heard what's going on in the Arab world, the movements, how do you look at this seism, how they say in France, how this earthquake that has been taking place in the area, in the region of the Middle East, and how do you look at it from your side?
I think, and I could be completely wrong, but I think what we're witnessing is the beginning of a great change in the world. And I think that it might have started there, but it might have started even before that. And I think what we're witnessing is capitalism being shook and coming to a point where it might crumble. I don't know what's going to happen after that, but I think the whole Arab Spring is a beginning of that change, of a process of change as we move into, you know, the future. I see it very much as part of a historical process that will end with a change in the world in some way, because it has to change. Things have to change, you know. And I think, you know, I think the Arab Spring is connected to the monetary crash and the financial crisis. I think they're all connected, and they all signal that we're moving into another phase of humanity. I mean, you have to remember, we've been around a long time. You know, human beings have been around a long time. Societies evolve over hundreds of thousands of years. There's a tendency in the present time, because our lives are lived kind of virtually on internet and Facebook and computers and blah, blah, blah. We tend to think in very narrow spaces of time. But if you think of the world as this thing that's been going on for centuries, you see that we're at a point now where, okay, let's think 1,000 years from now. That seems so far-fetched to people, but it's not. You know, the earth has been going for a much longer time. So 1,000 years of change is really a small change. And, you know, so we shouldn't think, oh, this is 1 year, what's going to happen next year? No, think 50 years. How is that going to change? 100 years, you know? So, I don't know. So I think it's a process. I think it's very tragic for the people that are involved in it and the people that are suffering in it. It's very tragic for the people that are suffering, the civilians that are suffering. I think that is a part of it that I don't agree with, and I feel strongly against, of course, because I don't want to see suffering on that level. But it's, you know, it's a process.
أنت عمرك 5 سنين أو 6 سنين، أنت في سن تنتهي الطفولة وتنتقل إلى المراهقة وتستمع إلى شتى أنواع الموسيقى. هل يبقى هناك مقطوعة، فنان، ألبوم، مكان معين، ذكرى في ذاكرتك هكذا لسبب أو لآخر وتستطيع أن ترويه لنا الآن؟ I'll bring you back in time. I mean, you're like not yet really, you're maybe beginning to become a teenager. You're young. I mean, something musically speaking stays in your mind, lingers from that. You know, from that period where we start saying, I listen to my stuff, you know, I'm discovering music myself.
Right.
So what comes now? Just, I mean, maybe a lot of stuff, but something that just travels in front of you now, in front of you.
That's hard, because I mean, I'm very aware of my history of where I came from musically, and some of the first music that really moved me before I really understood what music was really about was reggae. It was not even Bob Marley, but just in the sort of late 70s, we had this music that we used to call rockers, which were Jamaican pop music, essentially, Jamaican soul music, reggae. But you would have a singer that would sing for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then a DJ would come in and toast for the rest of the song. And that kind of blew my mind, blew everyone's mind at that time. So that's what I remember as being the point where I started really taking music really seriously. And that was like 77, 78. And that was people like Gregory Isaacs and U-Roy, I-Roy, Junior Mervin, you know, Dennis Brown, all these people, Joe Gibbs, that whole label. Yeah, that was the period for me. That's what I remember.
Cool. I think I have to let you go maybe, no? Right? I don't feel like doing that, but bye. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you. Same one.